Did you know that on launch, the Night Witch could solo almost every card in the game? Every so often, Supercell drops a card like this, which completely destroys the game and has to be nerfed as soon as possible. And that's what we are going to look at today, every broken card in Clash Royale history, and at the end, after looking at all of them, we are going to figure out which one was actually the most broken on release, so stay tuned. Alright, let's start with one of the oldest broken cards in the game. Way back during soft launch and when the game first came out globally, Inferno Tower was insane. We're talking like 1500 hit points at tournament standard and it lasted a full 60 seconds. 60 seconds, compare that to it now, and it's not even close. This thing was basically impossible to deal with. You had to just accept that if your opponent had Inferno Tower, your tanks weren't getting through. The problem was that back then, there weren't really good counters to it. Zap didn't reset it completely, you couldn't really outcycle it because it lasted so long, and it had enough health that you couldn't just lightning or rocket it for a positive trade. Expo was also really strong back then, but Inferno Tower was the real nightmare card that everyone hated. It made Giant and Golem decks really hard to play, because you'd invest all this elixir into a push, and Inferno Tower would just melt your tank in like 3 seconds. The only real way to deal with it was to either overwhelm it with swarms, or try to spell it down over multiple pushes, which took forever. Eventually, Supercell nerfed the lifetime down and reduced the hit points, but for those first few months of the game, Inferno Tower was just dominating. Next up, we gotta talk about Night Witch. She came out in May 2017, and this card was absolutely ridiculous. Like, people talk about broken cards and Night Witch is usually the first one that comes up. When she first dropped, she was spawning bats every 5 seconds instead of 7. She did way more damage than she does now, and when she died, she would spawn 4 bats instead of just 2. 4 bats on death. The crazy thing is that bats by themselves were considered one of the worst cards in the game at that time. But when Night Witch was tanking for them, they just shredded everything. Mini P.E.K.K.A, Prince, Lumberjack. All these cards just disappeared from decks because Night Witch was better than all of them. She cost 4 elixir and did everything. She had good health, good damage, spawned troops constantly, and gave you a ton of value on death. The meta became Golem Night Witch Baby Dragon, and it was everywhere. You would see it in like every other match on ladder. Supercell had to nerf her like 7 times. 7 nerfs, and even after the first 3 nerfs in one update she was still too strong. They reduced her spawn speed, they lowered her damage, they made her spawn fewer bats on death, they nerfed her hit points. They kept hitting her over and over and she was still seeing crazy usage rates. She got nerfed again and again until they finally killed the card. For a while there, Night Witch went from being the most broken card in the game to being basically unusable. The thing about Night Witch is that she warped the entire meta. Executioner became super popular just because he was the best counter to her. Poison became way more important because you needed something to kill the bats. The whole game shifted around this one card. People who had her maxed out were basically guaranteed to climb ladder because she was just that strong, and if you didn't have her, you were at a massive disadvantage. Alright, so next let's look at Elite Barbarians. These guys came out in November 2016, and at first people thought they were pretty mediocre. They cost 6 elixir, they were 2 tanky troops with fast movement speed, but they didn't seem that scary. But then Supercell buffed them, and buffed them again, and suddenly these guys became the most hated card in the game, especially in mid-ladder. The problem was they had very fast movement speed, high damage, good health, and they cost 6 elixir. So when you placed them at the bridge, your opponent had like no time to react. They would just rush down your tower, and if you didn't have the perfect counter in hand, you were taking massive damage. Cards like Mini P.E.K.K.A or Valkyrie could stop them, but if those cards weren't in your hand when Elite Barbarians got dropped, you were in trouble. The other issue was that Elite Barbarians were a common card, which meant they were super easy to overlevel. So you'd be in like Arena 8 or 9 with your level 9 cards, and suddenly you're facing level 13 Elite Barbarians that just destroy everything you put down. Your level 9 Knight gets 2-shotted, your level 10 Musketeer dies before she can even get many hits off. It was ridiculous. They were balanced at the top of ladder where everyone had maxed cards, but completely broken when overleveled, which made them really hard to balance properly. There were literally petitions online to nerf Elite Barbarians. People were that mad about them. The community was in uproar for months. Supercell tried to balance them by nerfing their hit points and damage multiple times, but the overleveling issue never really went away. Even today, Elite Barbarians have this reputation as the noob card that bad players use to cheese wins. They're way more balanced now than they used to be, but for like a year straight they were just terrorizing mid-ladder and making the game miserable for anyone who wasn't maxed out yet. Moving on, we need to talk about Royal Giant. This card has this long history of being super controversial. The big thing about Royal Giant is his range. He could outrange basically every defensive building except Mortar, Expo, and Tesla. And even with Tesla, he couldn't see it until it popped up. The broken part was that Royal Giant was basically guaranteed to get at least 1 hit on your tower. You couldn't stop him from connecting. Even if you defended perfectly, he was getting that 1 shot in. And once you took down 1 tower, you could place Royal Giant in the pocket on your opponent's side of the arena, which made him even harder to deal with because he'd lock onto the second tower so fast. His range got buffed back in May 2016, and that's when he became totally overpowered. For 11 months straight, he was just dominating mid-ladder. Just like elite barbarians, the big problem with Royal Giant was that he was a common card, so everyone had him overleveled. Facing a level 13 Royal Giant when your cards were level 10 or 11 meant he was just walking up to your tower and chunking it down while tanking everything you threw at him. You'd put down a cannon or a tombstone and he'd just ignore it and shoot your tower from outside its range. Then, when your building finally could target him, he'd already gotten 2 or 3 hits on your tower. It was so frustrating. Supercell eventually nerfed his first attack speed, so defenders had more time to react, but for a long time, Royal Giant was just miserable to play against. The community hated him almost as much as elite barbarians. The thing is, Royal Giant at tournament standard was actually pretty balanced. He saw competitive play, but he wasn't dominating. But on ladder, he was everywhere and everyone complained about him constantly. Supercell tried so many different approaches to balance him without making him useless at the top, while also making him less oppressive when overleveled, and it took them years to finally get it right. Next, we should talk about Executioner and Tornado together, because that combo was just insane. When Executioner came out in January 2017, he was pretty strong by himself. But when people figured out that Tornado plus Executioner was basically unbeatable, the meta got really stale really fast. Executioner had crazy high health for a 5 elixir card, he did splash damage with his boomerang axe that hit on the way out and back, and when you paired him with Tornado, you could just clump all the enemy troops together and he'd wipe them out instantly. The axe would hit everything twice, once going out and once coming back, and with Tornado pulling everything into a tight group, nothing survived. He had basically no weakness except against high health troops like Knight or Valkyrie, but even those could be handled if you had other support cards. The Executioner Tornado combo dominated for months. You could defend basically any push with those 2 cards. Graveyard, Tornado the skeletons to the King Tower and Executioner kills them all. Hog Rider with support, Tornado everything together and Executioner wipes it. Golem push with Night Witch and Baby Dragon, Tornado pulls the support away and Executioner kills it while your other cards handle the Golem. It was ridiculous. The meta became so defensive because of this combo. People would just sit back, defend everything with Executioner Tornado, and then counter push with whatever they had left. As I said, Night Witch actually made Executioner even better because he was the best counter to her and her bats, and even after nerfs, Executioner stayed strong in the meta for a really long time. They nerfed his range, his damage, his hit points, and he still saw tons of play. The Tornado Executioner combo is still used today in some decks, but it's way more balanced now than it was back in 2017 when it first became popular. Alright, next up is Mega Knight. He came out in August 2017, and when he first released, his spawn damage and jump damage were nuts. Originally, he did 240 damage per hit, but his spawn and jump did 480, almost double. That's way higher than what he does now. The thing about Mega Knight is that he would just drop on your push and instantly delete everything. Elite Barbarians, dead. Musketeer, dead. Wizard, dead. Any medium health troop would just get obliterated by the spawn damage and knockback, and then after he killed everything with his spawn, he'd jump to your tower and do massive damage there too. The knockback was also really strong because it would reset charging troops like Prince or Battle Ram. You couldn't really counter him easily when he first came out because he had so much health and did so much damage. Mini P.E.K.K.A was one of the better counters, but even that was tricky because if Mega Knight jumped away at the right time, Mini P.E.K.K.A would miss hits. Eventually, they nerfed his regular damage by 7.5% and buffed his spawn and jump damage by 23%, which sounds backwards, but it actually balanced him out a bit. The idea was to make him better at his job of punishing clumped units, but worse at just beating down towers by himself. Mega Knight became this card that punishes bad troop placement. If you clump your units together, Mega Knight destroys you, but if you spread them out or use high DPS single units like Mini P.E.K.K.A or Prince, he's actually pretty easy to counter. The problem is that, in mid-ladder, people don't really know how to counter him properly, so he still dominates down there. You'll see people trying to counter Mega Knight with a Wizard and Witch placed right next to each other, and then Mega Knight jumps on both of them and kills them instantly. At the top of ladder though, Mega Knight is way more balanced because people know how to play around him, but when he first came out and for a few months after, he was seeing crazy usage rates everywhere because he was just that strong. Now let's talk about Electro Wizard. He came out at the end of December 2016, and for the first few months, he could permanently stun troops. Yeah, permanently. His attack speed was faster than his stun duration, which meant he could just lock down Inferno Dragon, Sparky, Inferno Tower, basically anything that needed to wind up. They literally couldn't attack. Sparky was already struggling in the meta, but when Electro Wizard came out, she became completely useless. You'd charge up Sparky, start walking toward the tower, and then Electro Wizard would drop and just stun her forever. She couldn't even get one shot off. Inferno Dragon had the same problem. People were running Inferno Dragon in some decks, but Electro Wizard made it so risky because for 4 elixir, your opponent could just shut down your 6 elixir card permanently. He also had the spawn zap when you placed him down, which gave crazy value. You could drop him on a musketeer or wizard and instantly damage them plus stun them, then he'd keep attacking and stunning. And he could hit 2 targets at once with his attacks, stunning both of them. For 4 elixir, this card did way too much. He was basically an auto-include in every deck. If you weren't running Electro Wizard, you were at a disadvantage. In March 2017, Supercell removed his ability to permanently stun by making his stun duration shorter than his attack speed. Then they kept nerfing him after that. His hit speed got slower, his first attack got delayed, his health went down so Mini P.E.K.K.A could one-shot him at equal levels, and his damage got nerfed too. Even after all those nerfs, he was still really good, which tells you how broken he was at release. Electro Wizard is still a solid card today and sees play in lots of decks, but he's nowhere near as oppressive as he was when he first came out. So after going through all of these broken cards, which one was actually the most overpowered? If we're being honest, it has to be Night Witch. Like nothing else even comes close. Elite Barbarians and Royal Giant were super annoying and dominated mid-ladder, but they were balanced at tournament standard. Executioner Tornado was strong, but it required good skill to use properly. Mega Knight and Electro Wizard were crazy at release, but they got fixed pretty quickly. Night Witch though, she was broken everywhere. Top ladder, mid ladder, challenges, tournaments, everywhere. She completely warped the meta. She got nerfed 7 times and was still too strong. She single-handedly killed multiple archetypes and made certain cards mandatory just to counter her. When a card forces the entire game to revolve around it, that's when you know it's truly broken. Every deck either ran Night Witch or ran multiple cards specifically to counter Night Witch. There was no in between. So yeah, that's every major broken card in Clash Royale history, and Night Witch takes the crown as the most overpowered card ever released. The game's in a pretty balanced state right now compared to how it used to be, but we all know Supercell's gonna release some new broken card eventually, and the cycle will start all over again. Alright, that's it. Let me know in the comments which broken card you hated the most, and yeah, see you guys next time.